Listen. My fortune.
What do we have, Captain?
We have land, Mr. Murray.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Dan Hutnick, and today I am joined by Etienne Carrier, who is here to talk to us about mesh terrain. This is a very exciting one for me specifically, someone who's a vast majority of their time in the industry has been an environment artist, so some pretty cool tools here. So let's go ahead and get him introduced. Etienne, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing good, and you?
Very good, very good. Why don't you let
Awesome.
folks know a little bit about who you are and what we're going to be talking about today?
Yes, so as you said, my name is Etienne Carrier. I'm a senior technical artist at Epic Games. I've been with you guys for about a year. I've worked also for a while at Ubisoft, developing procedural pipeline for world generation and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm very excited to have had the chance to work on mesh terrain, that new tech, which is very exciting to me. It's something along my years working on games that I've been seeing the limitation of regular, landscape and height map system. And it's nice to finally have something that is basically breaking these boundaries. So
yeah, it's a system that's been fairly stagnant for probably the last 20 ish years, if not longer, where it's very limited height map, vertical. We're going to talk about all that, in this demonstration. But it feels like a real evolution a bit of what we've been used to for so long. So
Yeah.
definitely excited to jump in and explore all this.
Yeah, actually, height maps have been around like for over 30 years. It's like was first introduced like in very old games, but like in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's was time for a change, I think.
Definitely. Well, we have a lot to cover here. I don't want to dilly-dally too much, but I do want to say for folks that are tuning in live, if you do have any questions for Etienne here about mesh terrain, please leave them in the chat in brackets, question, followed by your question, and we will gather as many of those as we can throughout the show and toss those to Etienne towards the end of the show. You have any questions that are not specifically within the purview of this topic, please head over to the EDC, our Epic developer community, where we have our forums, documentation, tutorials, and so much more. Plenty of resources over there for the broader kind of ecosystem questions and things like that. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about mesh terrain, and I can't wait to jump in. So any other preliminary stuff we want to kind of tackle before we start getting into the nitty gritty?
I'm good. All good to start.
Perfect. Well, then once you're ready, we'll switch over to your screen share.
All right,
Let's do it.
It's on.
It is on.
All right. So first, I guess we figured like a bit of history for those. I'm imagining like most of you are really familiar with like the regular like landscape system, which is or in other like engine, it's like height base. So here I have a little very like small height map, which is 10 by 10 pixel, but just to illustrate like the concept, like the idea behind like regular landscape is that it's all the data is stored into that 2D texture. So the only thing it can do really is like these black and white pixel is the only thing they can do is basically raise or like specify like a height value. So they can only raise the height of the terrain like this. So it's kind of a lot. It's kind of an efficient way to store the height information, but it's really limitative in terms of what we can do in terms of shaping up our terrain. And we know like in the real world in nature, like terrain is not constrained to be only like pulled up from like a flat ground. You can have overhangs and stuff like that. And so really mesh terrain is that idea of now like removing that 2D format to store or terrain data. Now we're working directly with the mesh. So that means that it's almost like regular modeling. You're working on like your vertices and your triangles, and basically it's a mesh. So now we can still raise the terrain up, but now we can do stuff and like move sideways, like pull or geometry sideways and create, if we wanted to create like floating islands, tunnels and underground caverns and stuff like that. So as you see here, this one is in this example, this is basically a texture modifier, so which is kind of just like a height map. It's using like this Unreal logo as our height information, but instead of pulling it simply from vertically from the ground, we're able to basically take that modifier and really place it anywhere in any angle that we want on our terrain. And so we have a whole set of in the mesh terrain mode, a whole set of modifiers that we can use to basically shape up our terrain and basically change the triangles, shape it however we want. So just wanted to cover like that little part to illustrate really the difference between this new system and the old like height map based landscape and terrain.
Yeah, so you can use both meshes and, I mean, this might be bad terminology, but essentially a decal to also extrude
Yeah, I mean, like now, the map asset like textures, 2D textures, we can almost use as a decal now, in a sense that yeah, we can apply it in any angle, and we can also use it to transfer. And we'll see examples, but we can use that and like the texture information also to apply some material right into the weight channels, just like the landscape would do the writing into landscape layers to apply like material and stuff like that. But yeah.
Very cool.
So yeah. So and now today, I guess the main feast of what we're gonna look at today is like how we basically built this level here that we did for the Unreal Fest keynote. So I'm just gonna go and show, because for those of you that saw the keynote, it goes fast, like goes by really fast, like showing how it's getting built, but it's of course not going into detail of okay, which modifier was used, which asset, how it's assembled together and stuff like that. So we're gonna take a look at all of that today. So first thing, I would want to, when you guys are working with Mesh Terrain, a few things I would recommend doing. So first of all, what you can do is, because you'll have, if you create first like go to Mesh Terrain mode, you can create like your base Mesh Terrain actor, which will create for you like different your mesh, basically your mesh partition actor geometry. However, it's not showing some of there's stuff under the hood that is not getting shown by default, and you can turn on here, like on the outliner filter, mesh partition. You can show basically your mesh partition base and your mesh partition build sections. So I'm just gonna turn that on. And now under my mesh partition actor, you see that I now see my preview sections. And then the sections here, like this, is basically my base. When you first create like a new mesh terrain actor, I'm just gonna raise it up a little bit. The preset that you have here, and then the yellow lines basically show you how many bays it's gonna create. The nice thing with mesh terrain is that since you build everything with modifiers, like that base, you're not, that initial choice that you make, you're not stuck with it like later on. You can at any point like basically delete your whole mesh, the whole thing, the whole mesh partition actor. And if you keep your modifiers, then you can just reapply your modifiers to a different or a bigger. If you need to expand your world, you figured, oh, we're gonna build an open world, it's gonna be 2 by 2 kilometer, and then along production you realize, no, actually we need like an extra kilometer, like on the north side. You can easily like just delete it, create a new one that is bigger, and just reapply all your modifiers, and basically you're not losing. It's going to be identically the same with that extra zone added. And then we have other tools as well to just expand. I won't get into detail of those right now, but I think it's a nice aspect of mesh terrain, being able, the fact that it's non-destructive and like
Exactly.
really deep, that the fact you can delete the whole thing, just keep the modifier and just reapply it afterwards on the new terrain. So this section, again, like you're not stuck with the size of these base section. You can have something that decides automatically like the size of them. And really the only impact that might have is you might have like a modifier. If you keep only one section, that means that the whole thing needs to be updated when you're working in the, let's say you're working only here in the corner of the map, and you have a small modifier that affects just that, but because it's a big section, then the whole thing needs to be updated. Having more sections means that they only need to update if the ones that get affected by a specific modifier. But it's like, what's the sweet spot here? It's really like depending on your project, trial and errors. And then if you try something, you realize, oh, it's updating, or my sections are too small or too big, you can easily just change them afterwards. So that's no problem. So just wanted to point that out. And it's useful to have them visible here. And then
quick
sharing.
question.
Yep.
Quick question before we continue on there. So we have obviously the main mesh terrain here that was built in the example, and then you just added a separate mesh terrain. In a
Yes.
practical sense, is it better to try to keep it to as like few mesh terrain assets, for lack of a better term, as possible, or would it make sense for them to have multiple in a specific scene?
I think it could make sense to have multiple, depending on the context. Let's say your map, you're having like floating islands. Those islands like are separate. Technically, it can. Let's say you have 5 floating islands. Like each of them can be separate, like mesh partition actor. However, if you plan at some point to bridge them, connect them with a bridge, like a terrain bridge or an arch, then they need to be part of the same one. But or they can all be in the same one. Doesn't really matter. There's no right and wrong answer. I don't think it makes much of a difference in terms of like the final runtime. So yeah.
Perfect.
But we do have that flexibility. Basically, you can have more than one, or you can have just one, and you can change this along the way as well. So, so here actually I have two. I have one base mesh partition actor, and a Vista one that I added later on because I wanted to. I need to see like further away and have like more distant, which I'm gonna hide now for the just to see like the difference here. They're both overlapping. And this one I created like it was more lower resolution. The principal one was built so that it's about like 1 meter. Well, it was 1 meter per quad. And then the Vista one I created to be more like I don't remember, but maybe like 4 or 8 meters at like a lower resolution, since it's the distance. In the distance, it doesn't matter that much. But another way that I could have tackled that is I could just like basically create that very large Vista mesh terrain at low resolution, and then my main part of my like core terrain, I could have used also like a remesh modifier to just boost the resolution of that center part where I know the gameplay is gonna happen to like 1 meter resolution, and then start building from there. So that's one thing we can do as well. All right. So next thing when working with mesh terrain that is not on by default is showing like the mesh partition outliner. So we have an outliner that will show all the modifiers only affecting mesh terrain. So if you go to tools and you type mesh partition outliner, we can go ahead and open that. So here we're going to have a list of all the modifiers that are affecting our terrain. And if we go back to the really beginning of before all the modifiers, we have this bar here with the dots that we can use to disable basically the modifiers that are above. So I'm going to go to the first modifier here. So that just shows the original terrain. And the very first modifier that I have here is a texture modifier. Then I'll go back here to select it. And then maybe I'll also clear the PCG generation, and I'll bring it back later once we have rebuilt the whole map. So I'm just going to clean up my PCG biome. Right. And so yeah, so this initial basically valley, of course, with mesh terrain, there's many ways, many roads that lead to the same result. You can achieve things like in many different ways. Here we put this demo kind of pretty fast. So I started from like I generated like a height map in a different BCC as a starting point. So I have this height map texture that is valley. That also has a set of, so this is applied on my texture modifier that I placed here, and I can just maybe scale it a little bit just for fun, so you guys see like that we actually can move that around, rotate it, and basically this gonna apply your height. So yeah, just gonna bring it back to what it was. I'm also gonna hide these lights that were for like the inside of the caverns that were creating like that lava effect. I'm just gonna turn that off and bring that light back up. All right. So yeah, back to this texture modifier. So it's using like a height displacement here in the properties. I'm using that texture to apply the deformation. But as you see, there's also like materials that are getting applied. And this is achieved with a separate texture. So there's a weight channel sections. So basically what weight channels are is, for those who are familiar with the landscape, it's just like landscape layer that you can then tie and link with the material setup to apply different texture set and stuff like that. But weight channels, basically, it's just like float attribute on your geometry. So it can be used for anything, and it's a float, so you can use it like in your material, but you can use it as a mask. You can use it in the PCG graph to apply like a biome effect. So it's very versatile. But so here, yeah, we're using weight channels. We're using this different texture here that matches my height map. In it, like the red, green, and the blue represent like different materials that gets applied to the mesh terrain. So you can set this up. So basically, you can target. You can add as many as you want. Like the first one here, I'm using like that texture. It's going to target like the gravel material, weight channel. This one, the material sand, and it's using like the channel texture number 1, so the green channel, and then another one's using the blue channel texture number 2 to apply the grass. And then you can add additional one. You don't have to reuse like the same texture. You can use an entirely different texture. So basically, like the same texture modifier could apply like 99 different material if you wanted to, or also apply like a mask that would be used by PCG again. So I think that's an interesting feature of the texture modifier. Opens up a lot of possibilities.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So maybe next I can show, like, because speaking of these weight channels, as you see, they're available here, but where do these come from? On our mesh terrain, actually what's happening is that we have, for each mesh terrain actor, we also need to assign like a mesh partition definition asset. And if we go ahead and open this, that's where you assign basically your material for your mesh partition geometry. And then that's also where you can define your channels. So here I have like a material rock, gravel, sand, grass, and then this one was to test out like create a mask for the remesh modifier. Then there's bunch of other properties that we can maybe go in details later, but for now, that's where you can create your weight channel. So there's that, and then in the material, how we pull out these channels that we're writing with the texture modifier. Again, if I go back to my definition, open the material, and I'm just gonna show you guys how we can load these weight channels into our material graph here. So it's very like kind of straightforward material. Like we have a part of the graph that's like the rock texture, the gravel, the sand, and the grass, and basically we're interpolating between these sets. But here we have basically loading that weight channel mask to do that interpolation, that lerp between our sets. So that's all there is to it. Like loading a weight channel, you use like the mesh partition resource, you feed that in the mesh partition channel sample, you point to the mesh partition definition that you're using for that specific mesh terrain, and then you just go and select the channel that you want to use, and then we have this reroute node that's going to be used here, and then basically blend our material. So it's very easy, nothing complex here. It's quite almost the same as the landscape workflow. So you guys should be quite familiar with that. It's not too different. So that's good. All right. So next part in building this terrain next is I started adding like mountain shapes. So I'm going to go back to my outliner and start showing like the other modifiers that we have, which is another texture modifier. This one is using like a different height map. I can show quickly also in where I generated these assets. Like this one, I just created in Houdini, creating these shapes. It was a way to create, but that could come from any DCC basically. But yeah, exported some of these shapes. I have another variation here. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just using that. And as you see, like your modifier can be placed in any angle. So this one I wanted to pull a little bit like sideways to create like that main mountain shape here. And as you see, like there's like a strata effect that is happening on the side here, but that's all part of the material. It's not like specific to the modifier itself. It's just like we define like our terrain material here that the strata texture would only apply like on when the normal is facing a certain way. But there was one thing that we needed to do, however, is that when applying, because underneath before we applied these modifiers, we had like a bunch of grass and gravel that was there, and we didn't want any of that on the mountain part here, that we just wanted to be rock. So one thing that we did, similar to the other modifier, we're using the weight channels to basically specify some value. So we can, like as you said, like the other ones where we had that texture here that is applying like the grass pattern, but here we don't want to apply a specific pattern. We just wanted to remove the weight channel value for the grass and the gravel in where that mountain is. So what we did is basically use like the use this option here that is apply height min max blend. So what it does is really it's only creating like a mask where the deformation has happened. And then we're using like a black texture to set like kind of the value to 0. And then the alpha blend is set to the minimum value. So the minimum value between black and whatever it was is like 0. So that ended up removing that value where we placed that mountain peak. So yeah, and then these in the height displacement part of it, the alpha mode that we're using is like the max value as well, which is useful when we're also adding a bunch of these together. And let me show you, I'm just gonna enable the other ones. So as we see here, there's some of them that are basically overlapping. But because we're using like the max blend mode, it's just gonna take the max displacement value from what's already there and the one that this modifier is getting applied. The default actually is alpha blend. So if I switch that to alpha blend, it's gonna apply like it's deforming like the base valley shape that I add. So it's in that case it was more useful to use like the other blend mode, which is max here, which keeps and just basically does the deformation and apply like that rocky shape where kind of pulling it out of the valley without breaking the subtracting to it, if I can say. Yeah. So that's it for this one. And next part, I'm doing a bit of I'm gonna show the wireframe here of because the initial terrain that we had was basically we started again from a rectangle, so flat grid. So vertex was like the resolution of our mesh was about like a 1 meter per quad. Now we're starting to deform and stretching out these triangles as we pull them out with like the various texture modifier. Over next, what we want to do is start pulling out like these strata and make them a bit more 3D. Or my triangles, as you see, it's not too bad. I mean, but they're not as uniform as they can be. They're a bit stretched. So what we have next is this remesh modifier that I'm re-enabling right now. And this is this yellow bound that we see here. I just wanted to affect like this main area, this central part here. So it's currently reapplying that remesh operation. So as you see now, like I got like uniform triangles again to work with and start adding more detail in this area. So remesh modifier, again, it's something that's available here in the mesh terrain mode, the remesh one. And you can set the target edge length that you want to have. So 100 centimeters. So most of my triangles now are roughly one meter. So yeah, just gonna add the wireframe once more and maybe jump to the, yeah, I have this, this was my concept art when we started doing like this map, like I needed to have a visual target. So what we want to do next is really from these strata start pulling a little bit the shapes and extruding them so that it becomes like just to create overhangs and stuff like that. So again, with other texture modifier, and this one is using another height map, which looks like this, which doesn't show too much, but I can show the original one, which was generated again here. It's just something like that. It's very basic, but I just wanted like to have like a strip and with like a little bit of strata effect. So I just generated that here, exported as a height map, and now I can use as an asset. I have 4 different variation of these that I can use on various texture modifier to start shaping this up. So I'm just gonna re-enable this one so we can start seeing that effect. As you see, it's now as pulled using that height map, all my geometry, creating that nice overhang. I've placed my modifier in the angle that kind of match the stratification effect from the material as well. And this one is set in max blend mode again. But I have this. We can use kind of the same effect, but kind of to go ahead and just carve in also the same thing. So this other one here is actually set in minimum mode. So once it's updated, you guys are gonna see it's actually start like pulling in the word instead, which is kind of cool. Just gonna re-enable some of the other ones on the side here. Same principle. This one was set to carve as well, so maybe I can pull it a bit further in just to emphasize how it's gonna just carve that area. And yeah, and then just very simple like modifier like this, you start just placing them, combining, and you can achieve some pretty cool effects.
I just have to echo a few things I'm seeing in chat right now, which is just like,
Yeah.
this is so cool. So awesome. For those familiar with the limitations of traditional terrain, this is like extremely liberating. This is really cool.
Nice. Yeah. I find that as well. I mean, I'm super stoked of like playing with this. I have the chance to get involved in the development as well. So it's definitely super cool. So next, speaking of cool things we can do, So we've seen like a bunch of texture modifier, like moving the geometry, but the Booleans are also like a big part of the cool stuff we can do with that. So we go back to a concept here again, like creating like caves and tunnels is something else we can do. So that's something we can add here as well. So what I have here, I have a few Boolean modifier. I'm just going to enable this one first and maybe show which assets it's actually using. So Boolean modifier you can use either in subtract mode or union. This one we want to subtract, and it's using this mesh. Which doesn't have to be super detailed or anything. It's just kind of replicating like that strata blocky effect, and just using this as a Boolean. Here it allows me to like basically punch that hole and create that tunnel. And then we have other ones. I have a smaller one on the side here that I can enable, and then a larger one here that I added to basically connect the side of the mountain to the front and basically bridge the tunnels together. So I'm gonna enable that as well. Boolean operations sometimes are a bit slower, but works very well nevertheless. And one thing I can point out as well is actually these I generated here. So I made like a few variation of these. But the thing to know is that when you're doing the Boolean operation, the triangle and the resolution and basically the edge flow of your mesh is also gonna get transferred to the mesh terrain geometry. So if we go here, as you can see, like these triangles actually really come from my mesh, how it was triangulated. So that's something to keep in mind if you want to keep deforming that area inside the tunnel. If you want like if you don't need like a high density resolution, you can have a mesh that is low resolution. But if you need more resolution, you can just change your Boolean mesh to have more resolution. So that's gonna get transferred. So I think it's
Would
good to know.
would the remesh modifier also help with that?
Yeah, that's another option as well, right? Yeah, you're absolutely right. If I wanted to, if my mesh is low res, I'm fine with that. But some area I need more resolution, I can add a remesh operator here and just start increasing the triangle resolution in a specific area, just like we did for that mountain, that center mountain part here. So yeah. You can also apply weight channels directly with the Boolean operator. So as you see here, it was maybe not fully necessary because it mainly placed inside that mountain that was already kind of removing the grass and the gravel and the sand. But just to be sure, I also added like functionality to that Boolean modifier here. Added 3 different weight channels, writing basically resetting like the gravel value, the sand, and the grass to 0. And I didn't show this before, but like yeah, you have options to use like a constant value. From your mesh, you can also use the vertex color. So if my mesh had, let's say on the interior here, like let's say on the top part or just on the left side or the right side, you can have like red vertex color. Basically, you set it up however you want, but you can reuse that vertex color to apply like a specific material. So that can be quite useful. Almost like the same way as what we did on the base value here, where we had the different patterns available from that texture, but just picture this instead being stored in the Boolean mesh vertex color instead of coming from a texture. So that's quite convenient as well. All right, so next a bit more Boolean asset. I have a few more that I added here this time, but in union mode to add like a, sorry, it's moving too fast here in the viewport. But yeah, so wait for it. Those are using separate static mesh asset to just create like an overhang and added these extra formation. So an example of using them in Boolean mode. Then once you have your final result, you like regular landscape, you might want to scatter stuff on your terrain. If we go back to our PCG graph, I can show you guys how it was. We can read basically the mesh terrain and the different channels to start doing some scattering on our terrain. So just gonna go to my PCG and generate once more. Waiting for it to execute. Meanwhile, I'll go ahead and open the PCG graph. Right, it was not too long to spawn. Oops. So as you see, well, it's like nothing very complex. It's quite simple scattering here, but as you see, like I have some plants, I have some rocks that are both like the bush are only spawning where I have like the green area, and I mainly focus like the rock scattering where I had like a gravel that was applied by my different modifiers. So and oh, also before going to the PCG graph, I also managed to add like specific add back a little bit of green here on the side where I pulled out the strata, and I think it's kind of cool also. So maybe I can just go and select one of the specific texture modifier. Trying to find the right one. I guess it was this one. White channel. Oh, not this one. Bear with me a moment.
No worries.
Uh,
Is modifier selection handled just through this
well,
like outliner, or is there any way to do it physically in the?
Yeah, there's it's still something we need to improve. We have if you alt right click somewhere on the terrain, it will show you like the list of modifiers that are actually affecting that specific area you clicked on. So it's kind of a shortcut, but like in a situation like this, there's like many modifiers, so it's not necessarily easy to know which one it is. But yeah, actually, I found the right one right away. But yeah.
And could you rename these to help with that sort of sorting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think like having good naming convention is a good practice. Like as you see, like by default, if I were to drag and drop like a new texture modifier, it's just going to be named texture modifier. I really took the time to name them like strata side overhang, strata front, the remesh modifier, the larger plate. I also put in a number. I didn't, well, we can do a little side note here because you can basically the order that your modifier is going to get applied to your terrains, kind of like Photoshop layers. Each modifiers are like a kind of like a Photoshop layer, so you need to order them properly. And the way we do this is on each modifier, you will find like a priority layer and a sub-priority. Here, actually, I haven't used like priority layers, but I've just been using the sub-priority, and I've named them like priority 3. It comes after the priority 1, so it's a way for me to visually see, okay, in which order they will get applied. But yeah, I had to manually name them here. But if you want to, like on a regular, like open world game project, like I would definitely use like the priority layers that we have here, which you can define in your mesh partition definition. You can add different, like you could have like the base terraforming and let's say like the POI modifier, and then you would make sure that you put all your modifiers onto the right the priority layer and organize them like that. And then afterward, these layers um, in the definition can be resorted if you like. It's nothing is rock solid or final as you create things. You can always reorganize, insert a new layer in between if you need, and then there's always like the sub priority that is there to help you like sort out the ones that might be on the same layer. So
Yeah, narrowing down like all the like what features I think are the coolest with this, because there's so many amazing features, is really difficult. But I think for me, one that's standing out right now is just like the non-destructive nature of this. Like I love that.
Yeah, that's right. All right, now to get back to the yeah that effect that I wanted to add back a little bit of green here. So what I did is so in my weight channel for this specific like strata texture modifier that I added on the side that is just pulling that geometry. Instead for the grass channel is that I add this for this specific texture set, like this specific height map. I also add this specific uh, mask texture that basically I generated so that the red channel would represent like the one side of the mesh, and then the green channel the other side. And then if I show this in Houdini, I think it would make more sense. Yeah, each of them have yeah, as you see, like the red is just like basically like a orientation mask that gets baked down in texture that represent the deformation, just as a way basically to be able to tell, okay, everything that is facing upward according to that deformation, I would come back and reapply like the grass material on the top and like some of the cornices that this creates. And now this gets picked up by PCG. So all right, so jumping to our graph or PCG graph. Again, this is very simple. There's nothing like there's no sorcery or nothing very complex to organize. Using like the landscape and the surface sampler, you basically start from like the mesh partition query node. And this how it works. You can query different things from your mesh partition actor. You can query the base. So basically the base in that case would be just our flat rectangle or initial before any modifier. We have intermediate, which allows you to specify like a specific priority layer to read from. So if you want to do some PCG operation before, let's say, after applying like your base valley shape, but before any of the other mountain shape that would be applied by a modifier, you can get the state of the mesh terrain from this state from before adding other modifiers. So you can do that. And then here, I basically, it's just, I wanted to get like the final mesh. So it's very straightforward. You just use final. So that will give you a bunch of points. Maybe I can show some debug so that we see what's happening. Well, this will return a surface output. What we can do is 2 points. Where is it? 2 point. Debug. So once you query your mesh partition, by default will return a surface type, which is for scattering what you want. You then use just like the surface sampler. Or if you wanted to, because in PCG you can now like also deform your terrain. You can basically load all the vertices of your terrain. Then afterward you can just transform them and re-inject them into your terrain. And the way to do that would be this. So probably my bucks are too small. Like I'm just gonna use absolute. And yeah, now I have a bunch of white bucks. So each of these cubes now represent basically represent like a vertex of the mesh terrain. So you can now you have access to these points in PCG, you can move them around and then just re-inject them. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, for just basic scattering, that's not needed here. So we got our surface and now we're just doing like regular surface sampler to get some points. But as I mentioned, we're scattering like bush where the grass is, and the way to do that is on our partition mesh partition query. We can also fetch additional attributes on our mesh, so we can fetch any weight channels that exist on our mesh terrain. So we're getting the gravel, the sand, and the grass, and then that becomes available in our attributes. You should see, yeah, the gravel, the sand, and grass material float values available here, and then you can do whatever you want with that and use that as a mask and as a filter to spawn some asset. So yeah, I think that's mostly it, what I wanted to show today. Starting from this, you should be able to do a lot of things. I haven't touched on some of the modifiers, but yeah, we can go ahead to some questions, I guess. And if there's really specific question about seeing some of these other modifiers, we can do that as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I hope you're ready because we have quite a few questions. So we're definitely gonna jump into. There's some really good questions here. A lot of really positive feedback on this, and I'm echoing that sentiment. This is really dang cool. So yeah, we'll just kind of jump into these, throw kind of as many of them as at you as I can in no particular order. One of the questions that we had here was weight channels can handle material masking, as we showed there before. Can that be combined with manual vertex color painting to address problem areas or segments that need further refinement?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, your weight channels are actually kind of like vertex painting in a sense.
Right.
It's vertex like attribute that is stored on the mesh. So if you wanted to paint your weight channels, you can use the brush modifier to do that. Maybe we can try this out in this other just quickly because I haven't shown like it's lagging a little bit here. Give it a second to refresh. All right. Just gonna disable this modifier. So yeah, if you wanted to do just like vertex painting kind of effect, I'm just gonna set this like this. You use the brush modifier. The brush modifier, by the way, you can use it to sculpt, but also just to paint some weight channels. So I'm just gonna increase the bounds here, set it over my little island, and I'm gonna create some basically vertex attribute that I want to paint with this. So let's say we just go ahead and paint some gravel. So I'm gonna set this up here and then go to the paint maps. And now I'm in paint mode, as you see. You'll see like a little seam at the edge of where the bounds is. It's basically capturing part of that the geometry that is within the modifier and just setting it in a state that it's going to be editable while we're in the paint mode or the sculpt tool. So that's totally normal. Then you just go ahead and select your channel that you added. I added it here up front, but actually we can add it while the tool is open. I could come in and add additional channel. So yeah, I can just come in and paint some gravel. If we wanted to just, if it was not tied to a material, that now I'm seeing gravel because the material is already pulling that vertex attribute directly. If it was not like an attribute that was used for, again, material, you can go to the shaded mode. If it's just like a mask you want to use for a different purpose, you can just show it like in white and green here, red, and just paint your attribute. So this would be your vertex painting basically, it's because you're actually really, this is what it is, painting on the vertex from on your mesh terrain.
Very cool. Yeah, you actually addressed one of the other questions we had tier 2, which was, are there traditional terrain tools such as manually painting height information? And it sounds like yes.
Yeah, and that's a modifier, so you can move that around, and it's going to move your patch that you just painted.
I love the non-destructive workflow. I love that. I just can't get over it. It's so cool.
And again, we can move this.
That's
so it's
cool.
quite cool, like for a little like POIs, like something you might want to do in part of your level, and you know that someone like art director is gonna ask you to move around like 5 times during production. Having something like this is very useful, just for the fact that maybe sometimes not just like having to move it. Sometimes it's just okay. You build a POI in some area. You did a bunch of sculpting because like your initial state of your terrain before building your POI was something natural looking with erosion and things, and you went ahead and sculpted like a flat area for your POI, and then that POI has to move somewhere else. Now you have to bring back what it was originally, what like the natural looking state of what it was before. If you put stuff in your modifier like this, it's basically, you don't have to redo, you just basically select your modifier, delete it, and boom, it goes back to the original state. So it's a way of like setting your different sculpting effect in different like brush modifier and whatnot.
I love this. Yeah, I love this just even for like considering things like playtest, right? Like you might build a POI, like you're saying, that feels really good and is really cool, but then you realize like, it's actually the position needs to be slightly to the left. And then doing that traditionally would be such a pain to change. But now that seems like it would be as simple as moving a couple modifiers, which is awesome.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, also from my experience, is that when working on regular landscape, you like technically if you're doing something that you know is going to be a bit temporary or is going to move around, you like the right thing to do would be you don't want to mess with the base layer, because once you sculpted on your, let's say, your landscape base, it's part of that base, so it's part of that layer. You cannot just like further later like remove what you just painted. You need to kind of erase it and try to redo. So what you would do is create like an additional layer, but then you don't want during production, you want your stack of layers to become like like a big list of layers that you don't know which, like that deformation comes from which layer. So normally you want to keep things like these base layers kind of small so that it's easy to debug. But now with modifiers, it's easier to just, okay, this is its own actor. It's easy to add it and remove it later on, or move it later on if it needs to. So yeah.
Very, very cool. We're getting this question quite a lot, so I figure we'll just tackle it real quick here. Can any of this be done at runtime?
Oh, the famous question.
The famous question.
No. We don't support runtime yet. This is still experimental. So it's not gonna be part of like the first. We need to get this out of experimental and making it like a solid feature, and then we'll be able to start looking probably at runtime. But yeah, it's not supported currently.
Another question we had here is, does this work with world partition?
Yes, well, that's the whole point of, yeah, that's an excellent question. And I should have mentioned this. So thank you to whoever asked this. The whole point of mesh terrain, as you see, the base actor is named mesh partition, and the mesh partition stands kind of for like the fact that it's specifically made for world partition. So the thing is with mesh terrain, like we have the preview sections here. This is only editor only like geometry. We have a different representation for runtime. So basically we have compiled sections that are gonna be split specifically to follow up like to be streamed with world partition. So, and the way you would set this up is maybe we can talk a little bit about this, but in the mesh partition definition, we have this whole like build section that you define transformer pipelines and different platforms, different build variants. This is a transformer pipeline here only for the preview, so only the editor part. But and then if I open one of them, or right now in this example, I'm reusing the same one, but actually let's take a look at this one here because it has more. Mesh partition, just gonna open my definition. And this one has a more like classic setup in terms of build. So we have like a high end and a low end build, and then the common transformer. This one basically contains the collision. So it's like in these transformer pipelines, like a little shopping cart, and you set which component it's gonna contain. So this one is just set up for the which one have I selected? This is a common one. This one contains the collision transformer. And then if I go ahead and open the high-end transformer pipeline, then we add like the static mesh transformer. That's all it contains basically. So that's I was not to put any static mesh transformer, my runtime version of mesh terrain wouldn't add any visual, but would have like a collision. So it's very flexible. Basically, you can configure it however you want. And then so this is like the build variants, and then you have your platform. So you can define how many build variants that you want. And then on my platform, so I have the low end. The low end is using both like the common build variants, which contain my collision, and contains the low end build variant, which contains the static mesh. And then your static mesh for each build variant, like the high end one, you can add as many level of detail as you want. You can define if it's going to use nanite or not. So yeah, and it's quite, you can really, and then you can set how many platforms as you want. Like if you have Nintendo Switch, mobile, PS4, Xbox, PC high-end, PC low-end, you can really, that's quite powerful.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought that up. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then just remember the original question was about the world partition. So actually, in your build variants here for a specific, let's say the high end, you can specify that it's gonna be split section to match world partition runtime grid. So otherwise, it's gonna be split, not matching the exact grid, but it's gonna be split to its own predefined values, like by the max section complexity. So it's gonna put like it's going to figure out automatically how many triangles it's going to put in individual section. So if you want to have a larger section than your actual runtime grid and stuff like that, and then which grid it's going to get assigned to as well, you can control from the transformer pipeline here. I would add another transformer. I would select world partition actor properties, and then I would be able to select, okay, which grid I want this to be assigned to. So let's say I want this one to be on the main grid. That's also where you set up if the HLAD layer, if it goes into a data layer as well. So that's done through a world partition properties transformer.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad you brought this up because we've actually gotten several questions here regarding this, and that is, how does mesh terrain handle collisions? These extremely complex meshes with, millions and millions of polygons, that's usually not how you want to handle collision normally. What is mesh terrain's solution to that? How performance intensive is it? All that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah. So as you saw, actually, that's very nice because your collision actor is separated from your visual. So your collision can be you can set it to be in a different grid than your visual one. So it can be streamed at its own distance. You can have like, since you're able to set many build variants, you can have one collision that is for mobile and one collision that is for IN with its own preset. So and then, yeah, here in the transformer, you really set how much you want it to be reduced, like simplified. There's a bunch of like parameters to basically control the resolution of your collision mesh, and you have very fine control here per platform, and to get like the exact resolution that you need. And if you want to reuse the same one for all your platforms, yeah, the way it's set up, it's like here what we did. We're just created a common one, and then we're reusing the common on all our different platforms. So that way we know our collision is going to be the same on all platforms. If it's important, like if you're like, it's a Fortnite, like it all runs on the same server, mobile and other platforms. So it's important that the collision is the same across these platforms. So that's an easy way to control this. But yeah, that's how it's set up. It's you just set it up here, control your resolution, and then once it's generated, you can visualize it in the level. I don't have it generated here, but
that was going to be my very next question. So you're really you're on the ball here. You're getting all these questions before I can even preempt them. In the same kind of vein, another question we had here that I think is kind of interesting to tackle, which is, somebody says, I'm really confused as to how UVs are generated.
Well, yeah. UVs, they are done automatically. Right now, we only have like one UV set on the mesh terrain, or have plans to add more eventually. But right now, the UVs, they're mainly used to store the because the white channels that we paint, as we did here, painting gravel, it's basically stored on the vertex when we're indeed stirred. But in the end, in the final game, at runtime, I mean, these are not saved on like it's get baked down to a texture, and it's not kept as a vertex attribute, which we wouldn't want, because as you saw with the different transformer option, like configuring like different LODs, if you were to have a very low res for like LUD in the distance, if your weight channel were still like on the vertex attribute, you would basically lose all the details from your what you have painted. So it's important to keep this as a texture. So yeah, it gets baked down to texture, and these texture are the ones you're using. Like the UV that we bake is basically for these texture. Maybe I can bake the compile section here. It's a small. So we can see some of the baked down texture on some of the compiled section, just to illustrate.
Right.
Hopefully, it won't be too long.
I can throw another
Maybe
question
another
at you in the
question.
meantime.
Meanwhile, yeah.
Yeah. I have one that's pretty big, so I'll hold off on that one because it'll probably take a little bit longer than going through all of this. One question we have here is, does mesh terrain require nanite?
No,
No,
it's optional. Yeah.
but probably recommended when can be done, right?
Well, it's a nice, yeah. I mean, yeah. But then I guess depends on your. It really depends on your target platform. I mean, it's not mandatory.
And then could you use
Because instead you can as we saw, you can set your own LOD. If you're not using Nanite, you can configure like how many LODs your mesh is gonna generate for runtime, and instead of using Nanite, you just be using regular mesh LOD.
And in theory, you could also use the remesher, right, to go to like a specific density of polygons, either higher or lower, right?
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Another question we have here is, can resolution be controlled per mesh? Which I think we kind of did explain a little bit, but might be worth clarifying.
Yes. Per mesh partition actor, I guess was the question, or.
Yeah. Like I'm assuming they might have like some areas that might be just kind of like a rolling hill or whatever that doesn't necessarily need a extreme amount of density, but maybe there's like a hero point that does have a lot more going on that they might
Yeah.
want to prioritize density of polygons towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And like go back to the example that we have here, remesh. I did add this specific remesh here to like add more uniform triangle density on my original mountain. So because initially, like remember the triangles were a bit stretched because I did pull out this mountain. So yeah, in that case, it was to kind of more uniform triangle again. They were sensibly kind of the same resolution, but technically I could have dropped the resolution down or increase it like much more. And maybe I can like add a new remesh modifier, let's see here, to just drop set that to 99 and just drop the resolution like quite low res. So so it's generating. All right, there it is. Taking a moment to update.
There's a lot to process.
Did I forget something? Looks fine. Seems like it's not doing what I wanted to. Classic demo effect.
Of course. The nature of live.
Sure what's happening. Hold on. Oh, yeah. When I was doing the demo, I was playing around in the outliner, mesh partition outliner, basically disabling the top modifiers and just showing up to a certain point. So now it's still disabled up to this modifier. So I add this new one, set it at the top, but it's set to be disabled. So yeah.
The classic hierarchy.
Yeah. maybe it's kind of the way I set up my layout as well. Like it's separated from, so I don't have it always visible. So it's easier to forget that. But yeah, as you see now, it's working properly. Like now the triangles are dropped to 10 meters roughly each. So yeah, you can reduce the resolution in some area. Now it's just like within the volume, but there's a cool thing you can do. If you combine this with a brush modifier, you can add the brush modifier, set it to right into a weight channel that you can then just paint. And then you can have the remesh operation to pick up on the, there's an option to use an existing weight channel as a mask. Where is it? Oh yeah, density weight channel here. So you can set it up to use a specific weight channel and then select the, well, actually I have this like as a test, but remesh mask. And so we could use that channel and then just paint it. And technically it should only remesh where we painted. So it's a way to control instead of just having like a big box of remesh. It's more finer control.
Here's a quick question while this continues to do its thing. Kind of going back a little bit to the collision side of it. It's my understanding that the collision is handled automatically by mesh terrain, but we did have a question here is, do meshes that you use in mesh terrain need collision, or is that automatically converted in the mesh terrain process?
If Can you repeat the question? If it's mandatory that it needs a collision or not?
Yeah, like
right?
so the meshes that they bring in to use with mesh terrain, do they need collision, or does mesh terrain handle collision? All you need is the model.
No, yeah, all you need, like the ones that I use, for instance, for like the Boolean operation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like these, yeah, no, doesn't need any collision. It's just using the mesh. Let me select one. Boolean. Yeah, like these. Yeah, there's no collision on them, so it's really just the geometry.
All right, a big series of questions, kind of an umbrella of questions here that we have come down to performance. So first question, I'm going to summarize a handful here that I saw, which is that, is there performance considerations at runtime, or is this all a baked system and all of that, processing time happens before you launch into a real-time scenario?
Yeah, it's all get baked down. The process we're doing in the other Unreal instance, hopefully is going to be built soon. I think it just finished now. But yeah, it's in the end at runtime, basically you just have a baked mesh. So there's no, like all the modifiers, they're not there anymore. You just have your mesh, a bunch of texture if you're using any weight channel with it, all split to support like wall partition, and like your collision asset is going to be a separate component as well. So yeah, at runtime it's all just baked down, so it makes it very efficient. It's suitable for mobile. The fact also that different compared to like regular landscape where you have it like a uniform density of triangles. Since it's a baked mesh, you can really drop the like on the flat area on my terrain. Like I don't need like one triangle per meter or one quad per meter. That resolution can be reduced quite a lot. The fact that it's a mesh and it's baked down, it can have like good advantage on that front.
With
now
the
that,
sorry.
Yeah, I have my compile section generated now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Again, just to I'll show this at the beginning, but I have my mesh partition actor by default. The build mesh partition section were not shown. So again, if you go to filter mesh partition, and when you bake your compile section, you actually want to see this. You need to show like build mesh partition section. Now it's on here. So now I'm able to see compile section. So this is like the runtime version. Of course, like in the Idster directly, what is shown is the preview section, but I can show them by hitting the little pin here. It's gonna show like my low end and my low end and high end version that's are gonna be used for different platforms, and so you'd be able to debug the mesh from here. You would also see all the components that are contained in there. So you have your actual static mesh component. The far field is basically for Lumen. You might want to add this if you're using Lumen. Again, this is defined in the transformer pipeline. This is the IN one, so this one here. So if we look at our different IN, and well, actually should have here, it's the far field transformer. So yeah, to have that component, you need to add it here. I guess it was using a different definition. Anyway, it's here, we see it here, like the far field mesh component. And yeah, initially I wanted to point out like the different textures. Not this. Not virtual texture. Rendering. It's not this. Well, I don't remember where it is. Texture streaming. Yeah, sorry about that. There was a place where we could see all the weight channels texture available, like on the component, unless. Yeah, okay, sorry. It's on the main. It's not on the stats mesh, the mesh component. It's on the directly on the compile section actor. So yeah, this is, well, it's not very representative, but stuff that we painted, I guess. This is this. So it creates, so it's, I mentioned it's creating a texture, but it's actually a texture 2D array. So all your weight channels ends up inside the same texture 2D array. And then you can visualize different slices normally. I don't know why it's locked currently, maybe because there's only one. But if you add more than one, you could see, technically you could have like 32 different slices representing different section. And then this 2D array will be there. You're gonna have one per section. This is a really small map. So you only generated one compiled section. I could have changed the preset for like the section complexity. So maybe it would have split this into like 4 different compile sections instead. So, but technically, yeah, you're gonna have one texture array per compile section. If, for instance, let's say this was split in 4, in this left corner here, like the gravel is not there, the weight channel is not there, it's not gonna take any space in the, it's not going to take a slice into that version of the 2D texture. So it's kind of really optimized. So, and they're all going to stream independently per compile section as well. So that makes it kind of quite efficient. Yeah.
To wrap up the performance side of it, these are, again, they seem like they're much more like in editor considerations or questions here, but we have one that says on machines with fairly modern hardware, the engine tends to struggle with using mesh terrain in their experience. Do you have any advice or suggestions for number of layers, number of modifiers, things like that? Is it really just kind of throw whatever at it as long as the engine keeps up based off of your hardware? Should they be trying to use like as few as possible, or is it really just kind of, dependent on obviously hardware, but really just whatever you need to do in order to get the result you want, sort of thing?
Yeah. Of course, if you have like a 32 by 32 kilometer mesh terrain and you're loading it all at once in the world partition, of course it's gonna like struggle. Like mesh partition is made to be able, like technically you could create like a whole planet, but of course you won't be like loading it all at once. So like I recommend using like just like part of your, if it's very big and it's lagging and it's taking too much memory, just work on a smaller portion, load just a small portion in world partition to work on your terrain. That should help a lot. In terms of modifier, like the number of modifier, technically they all, unless you're, let's say you have like 100 modifier and you're working on the base one, that if you do modification on the base modifier and there's 99 modifier to update on top of it, of course it's going to take more time to rebake the final result. That's why it's also useful when you're working on like a specific step in the, if I go back to this one, as I have more modifiers, if I'm working on my base, technically there's nothing preventing me from the valley texture modifier to just start moving it around. But if I move it around, of course, there's all these other modifier that needs to be reprocessed as well. So while I'm iterating, it's more common sense to just, okay, I'm just going to go back to the initial, like just to this stage, do my iteration, move things around. Once I'm happy with that, then I just re-enable all the other modifiers. That's going to help a lot with performance. If you don't do that, and then working at the lower level here in the stack, of course, that can slow things down if you have many modifiers. In some cases, it will be quite fast as well. Like not all these modifiers overlap all the map either. Also, I mean, so if I'm working on the base here, but only in the on the corner, and I know that most of these modifiers don't really touch like the base section here, that won't have any impact, that there's 100 other modifiers because they don't really affect that section. But yeah, it's all things to keep in mind. But once they're generated, I mean, the result gets cached, so it doesn't have to rebuild everything all the time. If it hasn't changed, it's just using like the cache version.
Right.
So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. Last question with that one actually is there a way, or will there be a way to bake modifier layers? In my experience, high layer counts become very complicated to work with for large open world maps.
It's something we did talk about, but we don't have at the moment. That could be useful at some point to, yeah. Technically, we could take all of this and transfer it into like a brush modifier that would hold all the new positions for the vertex and just like bake things down. It's just not a feature that we have right now, but definitely something possible at some point.
Another question we have here is, many tools use landscape height data. How will 3D terrain affect these tools?
Oh, well, you can still sample your, yeah, the height data. I think you can just, we did this using virtual texture before. Basically, we transferred like the terrain height into virtual texture, not the overhangs, of course. We're working on the tech to have like more like a 3D RVT. But we had like some tests with like a map that didn't add any overhang, and we did bake like the height into RVT. So then we were able to sample the terrain height is done regularly through RVT. Otherwise, I guess you can. I can get back to on that question. I can get some answers just to validate some stuff. I want to make sure I don't say bullshit.
Yeah, no
But
worries.
I think there was a way to do it.
When we
Yeah.
when we get that answer, we'll put it in a pinned comment on the YouTube VOD. So check back a little bit later. We'll hopefully get a good answer for that one. Another quick one here, and I think this is actually a really good example because we can kind of see it on the UI already. But one of the questions we have is, does mesh terrain also work with traditional landscaping schools? Example, landscape splines for roads, etc.
Not the well. It works with the river, the lakes, all the water stuff. And you basically just go and add mesh partition component to the. Actually, I have an example that I can pull. Just quickly. It's a very work in progress little demo, but it has like lakes and river.
Yeah.
And yeah, it might look a bit cheapy, but it's like the principle is there. So like regular water body, you basically just add mesh partition modifier. Then that case like mesh partition lake modifier, and then it's the same regular water body component, and yeah, then it's going to be compatible with mesh terrain, and then you can have it do like carving for the riverbed or lake bed, and also apply a specific material like the gravel and mud, and yeah. So this is supported in terms of roads. The regular landscape spline roads is it's not only works on landscape, but you can do your own road tool with blueprint. So I have one here that I did that's basically a mix of PCG that generate the mesh, but then it's using like a spline modifier. You can, on your spline modifier, you can specify like the width, the fall off, if it needs to. I have a separate one in my blueprint here to apply the weight channels that I want to have under the road mesh. Doesn't have to generate a mesh as well. You could just have a spline modifier, can be turned into a road tool quite easily, actually. So yeah, we don't have dedicated. So short answer, we don't have dedicated road specific tool. The landscape one doesn't work on mesh terrain, but it's kind of easy to make new road tool from the available modifier and blueprints and such.
Yeah, I'm looking through. I have like multiple pages of questions here. I was trying to find one very specific, but it sounds like you kind of loosely touched on it, so I wanted to bring it up. I'm going to summarize it based off the best of my memory, but the question is does mesh terrain work together with PCG in the sense of like if PCG spawns a tree, it can adjust the terrain at the base of the tree to make sure that it fits appropriately? Like, is there any interconnectivity where like PCG can affect mesh terrain and vice versa?
Yes, we can do that, and that's one of the cool thing. Like I think landscape PCG, you add read access only. You can read the landscape. You cannot write back any effect or deformation. Now with mesh terrain, we can do stuff like that. So you guys want me to do a quick example or?
Yes, we always
Yeah,
love
all right.
examples.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to my like smarter level.
And I just found the question, by the way. It was, can PCG influence mesh partition? Say there are trees that get placed from PCG, the mesh partition deforms accordingly. That was what I was looking for.
Mm. Um, all right, so just gonna create a new PCG graph. Uh, Scattering.
Am I good to throw like a quick question at you while you're setting this all up? Or I know you don't want to split your brain too much because I know I have trouble doing that. So
Yeah, let's try to do that.
yeah, this one feels like it would be a pretty simple one here. It says, does mesh terrain support running a multiplayer game setup at this time? And I'm assuming the answer is yes, right? Because this is all like before runtime stuff, right? So we're really just
Yeah,
using mesh terrain to create a mesh, and then meshes work in multiplayer.
yeah. All right, so we'll start with the mesh partition query. And then we can do a surface sampler. Right, so now as you see, my query is happening like under the ocean. That's because by default it's set to base. Now I want to either get the final, but I didn't show it before, so maybe we set it to intermediate. And intermediate layer basically allows you to only choose like a priority layer. Intermediate allows you to pick a priority layer and also a sub-priority. So let's say we do this, and my modifier are set here. I have only a few ones. So this is my list of modifier that I have. Sorry, not modifier, but the priority layers. So
Mm.
I know like the top. Well, maybe I can get this one micro. I don't have any other one. So I just want to get right after this specific modifier, which is using terrain macro sculpt or whatnot. So here I can reuse the same thing. So terrain macro. Then you can specify whether you want it to be inclusive, include the deformation from this layer or not. In that case, I want yes, but if you build a system where you want to spawn something, but the thing is you don't want to be uh, I'm looking for the word like each time you generate, you don't want to get back the result that you have already generated. You would
Mm.
probably don't set this. Actually, I'm gonna do something different. Let's say we're using like the POI layer. So I'll leave it to not inclusive. And then what we'll do later on is that we're gonna use like mesh partition. What's the query? Mesh partition right. So we're gonna spawn stuff, and then from these points we're gonna do a bit of terrain deformation, and we want to write back these deformation into also like a priority layer. But we're gonna use like the same name, but since this one is not inclusive, every time it's gonna read back, it's gonna read up to this point without including the deformation from like the POI layer, but we're gonna write back into it. So that way we're just always reading before it does its own. So there's no recursive, that's the word I was looking for. It doesn't do recursive like specification that it's gonna like pull up and then regenerate and then read the terrain and pull it up higher every time and
Right.
stuff like that, if that makes sense. So one way we can set this up, what I like to do is add like a graph parameter and use like the name type and this rename to priority layer. So now I can use that, connect it here, and then my priority layer is going to be, oops, Inster is doing something. Right. I'm gonna set it to py. I'm gonna save right just in case. And then in my right, mesh partition right, I'm gonna reuse the same. Oops, yeah, the same type. Well, there's some naming that we need to fix, but type here is the same thing as layer name. All right. And what I'll want to do is convert my surface to points. And we also want, the thing is, when we write back first, the point number has to remain the same if we want to query the terrain and write back the result. We cannot change the number of points, otherwise it doesn't make much sense. But you also need to know what was the original point position, the vertex position from the terrain, and the updated position. And the right node here is going to ask you to provide an attribute that represents the position before any modification. So by default, this is source position. So what we can do is copy attributes. So before doing any modification, we're just gonna store our position into, whoops, I think I this copied source position, copy, paste. So now I have my position. I also have my source position that should be the same as my original position. And now I can start doing modification. So I can transform points. That in, then technically I can raise that by 1 meter. Yeah, I guess if I spawning some points, maybe I just want to raise raise the terrain around my points, or if it was trees, maybe we can change use a little PCG tree instead as debug. Yes, with the distance node, we can compute distance between, no. Actually, I want the distance from this to these points. Have you played a lot with PCG, Dan?
Yeah, a bit. I'm still a little green on it, but yes, I have been. I'm a bit.
I've done this before. I thought it was like the distance node, but basically I would just want to take like my points here, and then compute distance from all of my
Yeah.
my vertex point, and then just generate like a ramp, so then I can just. But I'm sure like people listening like get the point. Otherwise, like you could just scatter your asset, and then compute like the distance from your mesh terrain points to these trees, and then you just use that as a mask to transform your point and just, let's say, raise little bumps around your trees or any other deformation you might want to do. But yeah, as you see, like technically you can just, once you have your points here, and you've copied like the source position, then you can do any operation that you want on your mesh terrain point and write back the result. And then
I mean, we can already see it. Yeah, we can already see it affecting the terrain here. Just from that change you made.
It's very basic. I just raised it, but yeah, on the fly like this. Sorry.
No, appreciate
I don't want to spend too much time taking 5 minutes. Otherwise, it was the name again. But yeah.
Yeah, no worries. I know we're getting close to the hours, so we might have to lightning round a few of these. but we do have quite a few questions left here still. So one of the questions that we had here is the image you can use as a decal, is it straight black and white or only, or can you use textures with RGBA to give you different pictures in the RGB and A that you can switch between? So basically a packed decal.
Yeah, yes, I think you can. Let's select one of our texture modifier here. Yeah, you can use RGBA as you see. Right now it's just like a black and white, but there's like texture channel option here. So if it was uh, yeah, I add RGB, I could select which channel I want to use from the texture I'm using here. So yes, totally we can pack different deformation in one texture, use them in different modifier, and just use the channel that we want. So technically, one texture now becomes you can have 3 different variation and just change the channel to switch variation for that like displacement texture. So that can be a good convenient way to have more option within the same modifier. Yeah.
Perfect. Another question we have here that I think is interesting is when would you prefer to use mesh terrain instead of terrain exported as a height map, let's say from Gaia? And I mean, my inclination is why not both, right?
Yeah. Nothing prevents you from like that's kind of what I did here. It was not Gaia, but like my base, like Valley, like whatever's more convenient for whatever project you're working in, like the time constraint. If it's faster to do some parts in the DCC, import as map, and the fact that all of this can be like then combined and modified afterwards makes it very convenient. And like again, like that base valley texture that I have, this one, since it's used on my modifier here, I can still basically modify it in my external DCC, re-import it here, and it's gonna update automatically because it's gonna refresh the one that's getting applied. So you can update all of these at any time, and it's gonna update on your terrain as well. So you can basically sculpt the base of your terrain and just do some brush and external DCC and keep updating them, like all the ways, the possibilities you could arrange your pipeline and the way you structure your you're going to shape your terrain. If some part you want to sculpt here and other parts you want to do in a separate DCC, you can combine that however you want. I mean, it's yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. But yeah, nothing. I would encourage people to keep using all the cool tools available to achieve great result. I mean, that's yeah.
Yeah. Another question we had here is it a good idea to build non-terrain structure, such as buildings, into mesh terrain? Are there
Yeah,
reasons to
you
avoid
can.
that?
No, and it's definitely something that was also like it's called mesh terrain, but really it's a mesh like a world partition mesh technology. So anything big that you would want to work on collaboratively doesn't have to be a terrain. Like I mean, in our mesh terrain presentation at the Unreal Fest, like we showed like if you want to build a big spaceship or a building or like nothing prevents you from doing that. Like of course, keep in mind that currently we don't have like much control on the UVs. So if you just plan to apply like triplanar textures and material, that's fine. But if you really need to control the UVs, that's for now, since we don't have like UV stain modifiers yet, I wouldn't go there. But if it's not needed, yeah, the short answer, nothing ties it specifically to terrain. It can be any mesh. So yeah.
Right. I feel like this one's going to be just yes and yes, but we might as well tackle it real quick. The question is, can meshes from Gaia be acted on with Boolean? And can you use PCG grammar on it? Yes.
Meshes
And
from meshes from Gaia. I mean, texture from Gaia.
they probably meant textures.
Yeah. I mean, like let's say like this valley texture was coming from Gaia. Like there's, as you saw, like I applied, like you can apply Boolean at any point. You can insert like a modifier in the stack anywhere you need. So anything can act on anything. You just need to organize your modifier, and nothing. There's no limitation. There's no like order of type of modifiers. Like you can add a noise modifier on top of a spline modifier, and you can re-add a texture modifier on top, and they can all be sorted in any order that you want, and you can do. So yeah, there's no limit on that side. Hopefully that answers the question. Yeah.
Speaking of modifiers, is there a limit or maximum number of modifiers that you can use?
Not that I know of.
As many until your computer explodes, and then you found the limit.
I'd say 1 trillion. I don't know. That's a good question for the engineers. There's probably like a limit somewhere, but it's probably a crazy limit that no one's ever going to reach.
It wouldn't be a practical limit for I would assume almost everybody.
Yeah.
One of the questions we had is, do you need a brush modifier to paint attributes?
Yes. Yeah.
Simple enough. This one's an interesting question. It says, am I correct that the textures and materials can now do more with the landscape because of the mesh terrain in PCG to create better visuals, emissive, glows, glass, etc.?
I'm not sure. I guess it's kind of the same as what it was for landscape. I mean, you can it's kind of the same thing in the sense that you can control which material you apply where. Like, I mean, right now you can only have like one material, but within that material you can create any effect that you want, which you can control with the vertex, the weight channels that you paint, or you apply procedurally or apply with a modifier. So on that front, I think it's kind of similar to what landscape is already capable of, but maybe people will find ways to do cool things that were not possible before. We're always surprised by what the community comes up with, and yeah, it's a good question. But yeah, I'm not. I would say no, but I'll be happy to be surprised.
That's feels like one of those that you could just try, right? Test it, see what you can get away with. Considering that this works with world partition, I think it's worth kind of touching on this as well. The question is, can this be used for huge open worlds, and is there a size limit?
Yeah, well, that's definitely totally the point of measuring, was to be able to tackle a large open world. Landscape currently has like limits, technical limits that prevents it from really doing convenient but wall partition is for that, and mesh terrain mesh partition is made for world partition. So that's the right tool to create large world, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. The question here is it easy or possible to get physical materials working on the channel weight layers?
Yes.
Is there a specific order to follow for that?
I didn't show it, but basically, in the definition, that's where you would define your physical material, and then you can tie it to like an existing, let's say like rock channel, or you can have dedicated like channels that are only for physical material as well. You can reuse them or have dedicated ones, but yeah, that's where you would set this up. It's in the definition here. easy answer. Really, that's
Love it.
Yeah.
The other question, we've actually seen a few different variants of this one, so I'll kind of summarize it. But the basic general idea is like, how does this work with nav mesh? Is there any concerns, limitations, things like that?
No, I mean it's just like regular. We didn't see no. I mean it's just it's not different from any other mesh you would put in a level. Technically, you could have modeled all this from an external DCC, 3ds Max, or Maya, bring this in as a 3D mesh, and your nav mesh would be able to like generate same thing for mesh partition. I mean, there's nothing specific to it.
Considering that this works as a layer system where all of these are computed and then an output mesh is that's the final result. We have a couple of questions here basically around that idea. Like, can you bake all of this down to one just mesh and have that in the engine? And can you bake all this down to one mesh and then export it out of Unreal into another DCC for maybe a whatever needs they might have for their project?
Yeah, we don't have options to bake it down to export it afterward. It does get baked down for like we did on that little map before, like the generating the compile section is actually getting it baked down. If we load this one again. So this is the version baked down like this. That's mesh is now like the final version, including all the modifiers, but then the modifiers are not needed anymore. We just don't have a way to export that mesh, do we? I mean, I'm sure it could be done in a bit of code to like the mesh is there somewhere, so there's probably a way to extract it and save it as a FBX. I mean, yeah, if I look at because it doesn't show you like the stats mesh in the content browser, but it's there under the hood somewhere. So there would probably be a way to maybe some, I don't know, export. Yeah, to my knowledge, there's not a way to do it, but it could be developed easily by anyone, I'm sure, to extract it. Maybe at some point we'll definitely if it's a request that comes up quite often, like adding a functionality in like the mesh terrain mode to like export mesh terrain mesh or something could probably be possible at some point.
Another
Good
question we have
question.
here, yeah, that I think is pretty interesting is for folks who've been working on previous versions of the engine, or maybe they're on this current version of the engine and they built out a world and want to convert that to mesh terrain. The question is, can I just throw a bunch of static meshes together, scale and arrange them, and then convert them to a mesh terrain after the fact?
No. But starting from landscape, that's something we did a couple times just for test before we had the level that was done on landscape. So I would go to like the landscape mode. There's a place where you can export basically your height map, the final height map, the landscape layer to height map, like to external files. Then you can just re-import these files here and reapply them as a texture modifier. So you can easily convert like in that way a landscape into mesh terrain. But if you've assembled like a bunch of mesh and then converting, well, it's not totally true because you can put a static mesh in the level and then convert it to we have some assets. Um, all right, let's yeah, like my floating island example here. I can drag in this static mesh in the level. And once it's loaded. So I was about to say no, but yes, actually, because well, I'm not sure if you have several mesh. Let's say I have these two different mesh, and I've organized in different ways. No, yeah, only supports one, but maybe if you combine them in like geometry strip, like you put all this in a blueprint or something, and then you have a geometry strip, merge them into one mesh. Then if you have one mesh, you can then convert it into mesh partition. So here I have the convert process. Yeah, 3x3, 2x2. Oops. Then boom. Now this is now a mesh partition actor. I can add a brush modifier on it. Oops. And then I'll start sculpting this. Brush size. So yeah, well, if it's a single mesh right now, it's super easy, but if you have several mesh, I'm sure there's a way. Maybe it's something we can add support, like the convert option would support like multiple mesh selection. It's probably won't be that complicated, but yeah.
Very cool. I know we're just about we just hit the hour. Do you have time for a handful more questions?
The 2 hours, right?
Yes. We just hit the hour.
The final hour.
Final hour, end of the final hour. Speed run just a couple more and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. One of the questions we have here went back to where you were showing the water
Water
spline.
splines.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Now my brain forgot a word. The question here is, does mesh terrain work with the new water simulation system, shallow water, river actor?
Don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Another example
We
of give it a try. see if it works.
I'm not too familiar with it, so yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable doing it live.
No worries.
But we can definitely get the answer and look into it and get back to you guys on this.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's like a different water system than the water type that we have here. Like you mentioned simulation
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Again, we kind of covered this a little bit, but maybe just one final time on this one, which is how does mesh terrain affect your time in play and editor? Is it baked every time or is it heavily cached?
Yeah. Each time you hit pi, it's gonna bake the compile section. Usually the first time it's longer, but I mean, if you've done modification to it, that is. But you can also set things up so that you're like right now, like I've set up here where yeah, you can have like a more straightforward version that just bakes like the visual mesh and the collision, and you don't have like many different build variants just to test in Idster. But yeah, like short answer, if you press play in Idster, it's gonna bake the compile sections. Depending on how many variants you have, it can take longer or shorter, but it's automatic. I mean, otherwise you can do it manually from here, but So will it affect? And I don't think it would be too bad. I mean, someone iterating and sculpting, changing a little bit the terrain, and then go back in Pi to test it out, and then going back in Idster to adjust a little bit more slightly and go back, doing that back and forth every time could be a bit slow, but it's, yeah.
But that
Has to
would
be
only
tested.
happen based off of a modification, right? Like if you build your
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
mesh terrain
absolutely,
and then
yeah.
you don't change anything, next time you go to play an editor, it wouldn't need
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
that again.
yeah. If it's already baked and there was no modification, then it's there's no build that needs to happen or anything.
All right, got one more question from chat here, and then I'll throw one final one after this one, which is does mesh terrain expose stable collision surface for runtime PCG sampling via world ray hit, and can it still read baked Gaia masks for per surface data?
PCG World Re-It would work, yes. The Gaia thing, I don't know. Like the Gaia mask. Like I guess that person means he's transferring Gaia mask onto landscape and is usually able to sample the value. With mesh terrain, we should be able to do it. But there's like what I know is that we're definitely working. Like I mentioned RVT before, that we're able to sample the RVT so we can get data from there. Right now, there's work in progress on the material cache system that is like more 3D RVT. So we should be able to sample the material cache and basically get any, like the material cache will be able to hold like the the data from like the painted gravel or any other terrain mask that are used to be able we'll be able to sample that from any other asset that we would put on the terrain, for instance. But that's stuff that is still work in progress. Yeah.
Perfect. Final question for you.
Yep.
What would be any advice you would give to folks who are jumping into using mesh terrain for the first time?
Yeah, fun and explore all the possibilities. I mean, and I know a lot of people like they're used to just like a brush workflow, like just sculpting manually with a brush. I think it's nice to start integrating additional different type of modifiers in your workflow. I mean, just like for POI, like just using like the spline modifier, you have your actually let me load again the level that I have because it's kind of cool to be able to use like a level instance where you can attach like modifiers to them and have everything move at the same time. So for instance, this, it's a level instance, but I've attached like a spline modifier to my level instance. So I can still exit this, but it's very cool to just then, oh, I can just grab the whole thing, move it around, and then like my deformation like that flattens the terrain around like under my POI. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat. I mean, you can still add like a different type of modifiers in there, but uh, exploring this type of workflow of using many different modifiers in different contexts and spline modifiers can be quite useful to create many different type of effects. Texture modifier, as you see in uh, the other setup here, just combine a bunch of things together and you can create really cool stuff. That's the main one, and mesh modifier as well. I didn't touch on it too much today, but instead of using a texture, it's just projecting into a 3D mesh, so it can be quite nice as well. So yeah, that's my advice. Like, go ahead, explore different combination of modifiers to achieve your result. Don't stick only with like the regular sculpt. I think there's great potential in combining all of these together to shape up your terrain.
Absolutely. Well, Etienne, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about mesh terrain. I am still blown away by it. Like it's such a cool tool. Again, as somebody who's so used to the traditional, you know, terrain pipeline and limitations of it, to have this kind of versatility and ability is just so, again, like I said earlier, liberating. Like this just feels like you could just go in and essentially the mega lights version for lighting artists is we have for terrain artists now, where we can just kind of go in and do the stuff that we want now, and we don't have to worry too much about the limitations we used to have, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So
And big shout out to the whole mesh terrain team that worked on this. They like the core design behind this is very nice. So yeah, my hats off to all the team. Very cool tech.
absolutely, absolutely. And if you when you see and talk to them next, let them know that we love this and we want more.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Well, that is going to wrap up today's Inside Unreal. A huge thank you again to you, Etienne, for joining us today, and a huge thank you to everybody for watching as well. This show wouldn't be what it is without you, your time, and your questions. And if any of you came through the stream halfway through and wanted to rewatch it, no worries. We post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on both our Twitch and YouTube channel at Unreal Engine. You could also keep up with the latest news, shout out to other cool information on all of our socials at Unreal Engine. And if you haven't already, please join us at the Epic developer community, where we have our documentation, tutorials from both community and Epic staff alike, forums, and much more. But again, thank you so much to you. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. And we will catch you all next week. Bye, everybody.